Hey, welcome everybody. Welcome to the Home Base Podcast, and I'm especially excited for today's episode. We have a amazing guest with an amazing company that he started, and it's around a topic that I'm particularly passionate about: AI agents. So, Ronald, I want to jump
Yeah,
right in
Ron,
here. Yeah, I
let's
want
do
to
it.
ask you to tell us a little bit about yourself, man. Before we get into the business side, like just who's Ronald the person? Where did you grow up? How'd you grow up? And what kind of shaped you to get into technology?
My dad got me into technology because at some point I think to shut me up, he got a book and he threw it my way. It was gentler than that. Like he said, there you go learn coding or something. And he used to work at Linotype, for anyone that remembers that company. I'm sure they still exist. They did like the big printers.
Yeah.
And we had a bunch of Macs at home, and I was just messing around with them. So that's how I got started in technology, just hacking away as most people. I then ended up, I moved to the UK, and I did a PhD in something called agent-based systems, which is this is like almost 20 years ago now. Back then, obviously, artificial intelligence was not the same intensity it is right now. I actually had trouble at my undergraduate degree. I did my computer systems engineering at Warwick University. And the last year, you could choose a few of your courses.
Mm.
So I overloaded apparently my stuff with artificial intelligence and cognitive science from the psychology department. And I was called in because it didn't look like a proper computer systems engineering course. It was just too much AI stuff in it. So that
Mm.
was AI 20 years ago. But on the back of that, I went and did a PhD in agent-based systems in a group called Intelligence, Agents, and Multimedia. The head of that group is a guy that is now kind of resurfacing all over LinkedIn, Nick Jennings, because a lot of people are referencing the paper that he wrote in '95 around intelligent agents. It was Nick Jennings and Mike Wooldridge kind of giving definitions of what an agent is. So yeah, that's my background. I then did a few years in academia, went and started a bunch of various projects and companies. And the reason I'm here now doing this stuff is back in 2017, I thought all this conversational AI stuff was really interesting. It would be cool to get back into it. Did a professional services like a consultancy, and we were using things like Dialogflow, which still exists, but it's not as popular. Using things like Amazon Lex and so on to build chatbots. Um,
Yeah.
and it was difficult, and they were really bad. But we kept trying. And we said, you know what? The thing that's really missing is just some method to this madness, right? Like we have NLU tools, we have things that I can understand a bit what a user is saying. How do you put some structure into all of that? And that led us to building our own internal toolkit that sort of sits on top of NLU capability. That grew and grew, and then in that company got acquired by a much larger consultancy. While we're sort of doing our earnout in this other consultancy, we really spent time on building what is now OpenDialog, which is the product of my current company. Convinced that consultancy to spin us out. We got some seed investment about 3 years ago. I think it was like 4 million to go start scaling what is now called OpenDialog Limited. We raised a Series A about a year ago, or a year and a half ago. And yeah, that's so what I'm doing now is something called OpenDialog AI. It's an AI agent management system focused on sort of conversational scenarios. There you
Wow,
have
that's
it.
cool.
2 minutes.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. 2 minutes. That's good. And so, The company you're currently tell everybody a little bit about the company you have right now. What's its name? Exactly. What is like? I would say the value prop of your company. What problem are you trying to solve for the market? Just so people can know a little bit, because we were talking before we kind of went live, and I was thinking, I might use Ronald's company, myself, and my own company where I work. So that might be interesting for people to know who they're listening to.
Right. So OpenDialog is we built a software, SaaS software. It's an AI agent management system. If you're looking to build conversational experiences, right? It could be a simple support chatbot. Where we really excel is multi-step conversations with complicated back and forth and so on. Then OpenDialog is a tool for you. It integrates, obviously, these days with generative AI in the back end. It provides a specific methodology and approach to how you build these conversational agents so that they can go and execute tasks, so that you can finally manage their knowledge, your conversational history, like all the ingredients that you need to build something that you can trust will actually go and do the job that you need to get done. The methodology that we use is the key interesting thing, right? Like from the get-go, and this was 2019, we adopted an agent-based approach to how we're building this. There's a slight twist to it that we can talk about later, but the main reason you would use it is safety, explainability. It's a really fine-grained approach to what your conversational agent is doing. Move quickly. It's a no-code environment, so you can build sort of complicated conversations quickly, deploy them, scale them. We've been around for some time. And we've been working for large organizations. It's only recently that we sort of opened it up. So we've solved a lot of the boring problems that we have to solve when you're working with enterprise. Like there's all the exciting stuff, right? But then it also just has to work. So it's kind of a combination of those two things that now give you a pretty solid piece of software.
And a lot of people, I think there's a lot of people right now in the market testing like this technology out right now, right? It's new. You started seeing the hype cycle kind of ramp up around AI agents. And then you have other labs that have been doing this for a long time, testing this out, like agent swarms, agentic mesh. There's been a lot of names that I've seen come out. Is this, how accurate, like you start putting this together, what are some of the challenges with accuracy and trust when you start getting these systems to talk to each other and take autonomous decisions by themselves? What have you seen in terms of like someone comes to you because they're frustrated, they can't get the thing to do what they want, or they're interested, look, I just want to hand it over to you. What are some of the challenges they run into, and what can people start expecting when they put these systems together? You who have been doing this for a long time.
So let's put some structure to this. I think there is sort of three areas where things go wrong. The first one is language understanding, so basic language understanding. And that's the one that currently with large language models, a lot of those problems are actually solved. And it's getting way, way better. A couple of years ago, it was just a lot of work to just get it to understand, hey, I want to update my bill, right? I want to change my address. Just train it for simple things like that. The second area, which is still a challenge, is context. When we speak, there's a few things going on, right? There's the words that we say, and there's the context within which we say those words. And we interpret using both of those levels. That context still trips up people quite a bit, right? Because I can use the exact same words. Typical example is, imagine walking into a store and you say, I need help, right? And the person that's working at the store will have seen that you just walked in, and they'll say, oh, well, you can browse around, you can look at things, and then ask me, and I can help you. If it's kind of further on in your store journey, and you're about to pay and you're sort of handing over your credit card, and you say, I need help, if that person came back with the answer, oh, you can browse around and you can look at things, and it's wrong, right? You said the same words. They understood that you asked for help, but the context within which you asked for help is completely different, right? With the technology that we have right now, the large language models are good at understanding what you said. They're pretty good at keeping track of conversation context. I mean, we've had a few exchanges. I know what you said before. And I can try and connect everything together. But they need to be told quite explicitly what just happened with the process that's happening, right? And that's where a lot of conversational solutions right now just, are having challenges with that. And then in addition to the process, you also have the bit where who is it that you're talking to, right? And that's something you need to bring into it.
And like, what do you make of like are you guys focused on a specific industry, or are you guys kind of going wide across all industries? And if someone was to get started, how would they consider themselves, like, how would you consider someone a good candidate? Like you mentioned enterprise, but is this like, do you need to build hyper focus on a certain scenario if you're a startup and you're trying to get into that game? What and then also, like, what types of frameworks for AI agents should someone be considering? Because I know that's super important, right?
So for our context, it's if you're trying to solve a problem where it's not just answering questions, right? So we're within the conversational space. So someone is going to interact with your AI agent, with your chatbot, and so on. And there's actually a bit of a process. For example, an insurance claim, right? There's multiple steps to that process. It gets complicated. There's legal implications. The company that needs to cater for this, there is an authority that's managing what they can say and they cannot say, and they have to abide by those rules and so on. So you have a complex conversation. That's where OpenDialog is a really good fit. You asked about frameworks. We are that framework, right? That's the ingredients that go into OpenDialog is plug in your large language model, whatever is your kind of preferred flavor this month. Plug in your knowledge. You might have documents explaining what's possible and what's not possible. Integrate into your backend systems. So you bring all of that into OpenDialog, and then you build this environment within which an AI agent and a user are going to be communicating to solve their problem.
Very cool. Very cool. I was just, so I'll ask a kind of a larger question. This might take a little bit to ask it, but I just was in Europe for a month, okay? And kind of like, so what I did was I brought my wife with me, and we went to all the places. We did a DNA test for her, and we went to all the places that showed up in her DNA, right? To kind of walk her through, like, your ancestry. And you can see the streets they walked in, and Europe's a perfect place, right? Because people will be like, oh, that building's 2,000 years old. And you're kind of like, they don't update anything here, but it's really cool to see that, right? And we were in Portugal, in Lisbon, and there's this big structure where it's about a 60-foot tall structure, right? And it kind of slants upward diagonally like that, and then you have these big stone carvings of men. Like at the very bottom, there's a knight with his head on the hilt of his sword, and then you have a priest holding his cross up towards the sun. And this thing's like right in front of the sea, the Douro River. And And for people that have never been to the Doral River, right, it's super wide and massive, kind of like the Mississippi almost, like at certain points. So you're standing at this river, the sculpture is looking at the sea, and at the very top, there's Vasco da Gama. Vasco da Gama was a great explorer, right? And he's holding one of his ships in his hands like this, and he's pointing it at the sea. And I thought, and then if you've never been to Portugal, man, some of the architecture is just so stinking gorgeous, and you can see there was a time where business was booming. And they even call this time the age of discovery. And it's like, that moved me. Because like at the time, everybody was telling Vasco, like, you're going to fall off the edge of the world. You're going to die when you sail out there. And he started like this whole ship industry where he was building ships, training sailors, teaching how to people to seafare. And then he made this bet where it's like, I'm not going to fall off the edge of the sea. And they kept on going further out. And then he found his way to India, right, eventually. Cutting the Silk Road journey, 2 years down to 6 months. And kind of like AI is a little bit like that for me. I was looking at that, like AI is a little bit like that. We're all trying to get to that, cut the Silk Road down to a certain time frame, right? And get to this age of discovery a little bit in our lives, right? So I'm sure you guys understand the parallels there. It was almost in like that analogy. I was thinking about that. But obviously there's risk. Like Vasco made his country super rich because he was daring to face certain challenges and so like I see people that are going off to start a business in this day and age getting into AI. I see the risk. I see like the statements that people are making that's maybe not based in reality. And David and I were talking about some of the hype out there, right? And he made a statement. David, you want to make that statement about hype, and we can maybe tie it back to why I told that story. But I think there's a lot of hype around AI. I think there's a lot of guessing about what's to come in the future. And I'd be interested on your take about what's coming in the future because you're working in it. Yeah. I also see like a lot of systems where these agentic AI systems hallucinate like crazy, or they go off and do their own thing that's not in their instructions. And maybe you can kind of tell people about like, you know, give them like I guess give them like one practical AI use case you can get started with right now, and then maybe like what's crazy, what you might see coming at you in the future. And David, maybe you can elaborate on the hype thing, hype versus reality.
Yeah, I mean, the main thing that like I think people are concerned with, like when we talk to businesses, right? Like the gap between the hype and the actual use cases is like too wide. And going back to what Ben just said, it's, you know, a lot of people are afraid to take that risk and start like not even implementing, but like experimenting with AI. They're just sitting on the sidelines and waiting around when like things will just work. But I don't think that's the right approach, right? Like when I first tried out ChatGPT or Cloud, I was like, I don't know, this sounds like AI. But then I'm like, okay, well, let me play with it a little bit more. And all of a sudden, like, you know, we're doing marketing without needing to hire like big marketing executives, like, and it's coming out pretty good. Like we're getting results, like we're linking partnerships. And I have, you know, in some cases, like interns doing some of the things that could before were supposed to be done by, you know, more like senior leaders, and it's working. And so for us, it's still a great problem, you know. so yeah,
I think,
what do you see, I guess on that note, what do you see you know, out there with AI agents? Is it something of the similar? Because like the problem that comes up is like, oh, it gets you 80% there, but like the other 20%, like who's gonna do that work, like, you know?
Yeah. So look, I think there is, the first thing to say that there is real value in this technology. This solves actual problems that people have. The challenges come in a few different ways. The first one is there is a definite divide between, just call it the AI people that live in this bubble, and you know, as soon as OpenAI announces something, they're all over it and they're getting excited and so on, and the rest of the people. The majority of the organizations that we talk to, which are not you know, your top 100 companies in the world, they are like in the top 10,000, right? They don't have AI people, they've never done a prompt. Like they've played with ChatGPT, but they've never actually done anything in their organization that is at most, like you ask them, so what are you doing with AI? And say, oh yeah, we have a project that's been going for 3 months. And what does that project do? It summarizes a conversation. And that's it. And we're thinking about whether, which is, the simplest thing that you could imagine, right? It takes, I don't know, 1,000 words, if that, and it tries to produce a summary. And that's where they are. They're sort of thinking, should we release this? Shouldn't we? Don't know, and so on. So there is a huge divide between the AI labs like OpenAI and Anthropic and the stuff that they're coming out with, like Operator and Deep Research and so on, and the rest of the world. So that's the first thing. The other source on this is the influencer market that has developed around AI, where they show up on LinkedIn and it's like, hey, you can run your entire business with AI agents and it's going to be amazing and you can build all this in a couple of hours. And then we get people that have not done a prompt that come to us and say, you're going to solve all our problems tomorrow, right? Like I've seen on LinkedIn that this is doable. And the reality of it is that we're very far away from that, right? There is useful things that you can do right now that are not just summarization. You can actually automate processes, but they're very specific processes. They have to be put in guardrails. You have to have confidence that it's going to happen in an appropriate way, right? So when we go into an insurance company and we're building even just a simple conversational AI agent, those responses get sent to the people that oversee that insurance company, right? And their auditors. And you have to get to 97, 98% accuracy, not linguistic accuracy, content of the responses, so you're not breaking any laws. That's a pretty high bar, but you can achieve that. What you cannot achieve is letting loose AI agents in your organization that replace actual people. There's a great paper called The Agent Company. It came out in December 24, right? And they said, okay, let's set up an experiment. Let's do this properly. So we're going to build like a company situation, and there's something like a Slack thing. There is a code base. You have some tools. And we'll put these AI agents and let them go do tasks that you would expect a junior member of your organization to do. The accuracy that they achieved is 24%. More worrying than the lack of accuracy is what happens when those agents solve social unexpected problems on their own. So for the best example is the agent was supposed to go do a bit of work and then report to Dave. And they had to find Dave on Slack, or the equivalent of Slack that they use, and say, hey Dave, I'm done. So the agent went there and couldn't find Dave. So they found some other user account, changed the name of that account to Dave, and said, hey Dave, I'm done. Right? And that's just, it's exactly this that you don't want to be happening in your organization. You can automate processes, you can look at what your people are doing today, how they're spending their day, and you can make that much more efficient, but you cannot have AI agents that are fully autonomous running around the organization doing whatever. We are technologically, like you can give them access and they'll write the code and they'll read your APIs and they'll try and do stuff, but I have not seen a single research paper that says this is okay. Like this can actually work. So yeah, I would not recommend that.
One quick thing. Maybe you can tell us about some like use cases where like AI had like really shines, like, or like in your case, like who are your happiest customers where it's like solving a big problem for them, and they're ecstatic
Yeah.
about your product.
So let me give you a few examples, right? So we have one customer, it's a cyber security charity, actually. Um, and the way they use AI is so people get attacked every day, and the police can't really cope, right? And in order to deal with a cybersecurity issue, you need to have expert knowledge. The challenge this charity is trying to address is the fact that people cannot even Google what their problem is. Right? So they built a chatbot, a virtual assistant, where you can go and you can tell it what happened to you in your own words. Right? Like I switched on my computer and this thing popped up and it said, unless I send some Bitcoin over to this thing over here, they're going to erase all my files. Like you just tell it what happened to you in a very natural way, and it will then pass that through a couple of filters and their backend database and so on, and a large language model, and will say, okay, so we think it could be this or this. Tell us a bit more. They sort of go through the process, and then they come back with, okay, this is what happened to you. Go read this guide. This is what you can actually do, right? So it's a very specific solution to a real problem. Or we have another company, they have to contact, this is an insurance company, right? And they rent out, not they give people replacement cars, right? So your car is banged up, they give you a replacement car, and then they have to pick it up. And this was a very expensive process because they had to call up and say, hey, can we collect the car tomorrow morning? The person on the other side would say things like, I have to go take the kids to school, or I'm on holidays, or I'm not happy with how you fixed my car. I don't want to give this car back, and so on. And their people would just spend their time trying to solve this problem. That's a problem you can automate. So what happens right now is they send people, they don't even call them, they just send them an SMS saying, hey, we're going to need to pick up your car tomorrow. And then that person has a conversation with an agent, an AI agent, and they will say things like, they're not going to say, no, I'm not available, but I will be available at 3 p.m., blah, blah, blah. They'll just say things like, I have to take the kids at school, or I'm not happy. And the large language model is good enough, and it has enough context about the business process to say, okay, that means we're going to have to do this, down to things like, one of the solutions is leave your keys under a vase.
Yeah.
Like you can have an automated conversation that does that. That's fantastic. That is not something that runs your company. It's a point solution that removes a problem for a company. They actually then figured out, because they're having this automated conversation, they can also do like upsells. If they say, oh, you want to keep the car a bit more? Sure, give us your credit card, and we'll stick around. You can keep it. And so they've lowered their customer service costs. They're doing more sales, and their people can go on and do other things. Win-win. You don't need the hype, right? You don't need it's going to run your company. It's going to solve real problems. And I think we have the tools today for this.
So these agents, what you're saying is like for very specific use cases. I want to put together a customer quote based on historical data. I got agents working on that, and that's something they can do because it's grounded in facts and data, and it's not a lot of it's not like they're just going to take over the whole process, respond back to the customer, be able to think through like, how do I upsell and cross sell these guys, and so that makes sense. What do you think is what are there any skills somebody needs when they're approaching building AI agents and getting them to work together? What are some of those skills that someone would need? Like, obviously, we have some guys in our organization that are, in my opinion, very good with prompt engineering. Like, they take it to science. Like, what are some of the skills you would need? Like, if you're going to build a little team, startup company, what are some of those skills you need to be good at this?
That's a very good question, right? So one of the challenges that we are coming up against is You go into an organization, you look at their processes, and you say, okay, we can fix this for you. Tell us what you do. That bit there, tell us what you do, is a huge challenge. Like, so yeah, someone will call, and then I think John, I think they talk to John, right? So you go to John, okay, John, what do you do? And it's like, oh yeah. Well, sometimes I do this, some other times I do this, but when this happens, like, okay, is there anywhere that this is written down? It's no.
No.
There's all this implicit knowledge embedded across the organization in different people's mind. There's some things in some manuals, but the people know where the manual is going wrong and so on. So actually describing your processes is the first step to being able to automate them. It sounds like an obvious thing, but a lot of organizations are not there. Then the second bit is what you said, Benjamin. It's like, okay, you know your process, now write it down in English. That's all we need to do these days, right? Just write it down in English. One of the other exercises we'll do with people is we'll sit down, here's the prompt that they've written. Say, okay, let's go through this prompt, right? Like, does that bit make sense? Like, no, that's not clear, isn't it? Well, yeah, it's not clear. So how is the large language model supposed to interpret this thing and figure out what to do? You have to provide instructions that are clear. So skills are organizational skills, I guess. The ability to actually understand what is going on in your organization, the ability to describe it in clear English, think through processes, think across multiple dimensions. Those are really good skills to have right now.
Yeah, that's very cool. Is there like a novel use case that anybody can use agentic AI for right now, today, that they can implement in their business? I'm looking for a little bit of secret sauce here.
Novel use case. Define novel for me.
What would be like a new use that someone can take agentic AI and say, I want to go out and hire Ronald's company? Is there a novel use to use agentic AI and in their business today to get like just push efficiency up 20%, 10%?
I think at a high level, beyond kind of the specific thing, right? It's you have to think about what this does to your business. So the first level is you take your existing processes and you make them a bit more efficient, right? The second level is you replace them completely, you automate them completely. The third level is you rethink what your business does. So depending on what your organization is actually doing, you can start thinking about how is that interesting from a automation perspective. How can I rethink it? So for example, if say you're selling something, right? What you can start thinking about right now is how can I have a conversation with a user where it's a real back and forth, right? And I actually change their mind. So it's not just, what are you looking for? I'm looking for, blue shoes, size 10. Oh, here are some blue shoes, size 10. But it's actually, have you thought about red shoes? I think red shoes would fit better for you. And like that level of presenting some arguments, having a bit of a negotiation, changing someone's mind, is extremely powerful, right? If you think a bit broader what's going on in the world, it's incredibly powerful. And that is something that most organizations are just not exploring right now. And you can do it. It doesn't have to be, it's not about building chatbots that talk to people. It's like your entire website, if you think of every single element on a web page as something that can be manipulated by an AI agent in the back end, and it's a conversation. There's a conversation across different modes and ways of interacting with the user. that can be incredibly powerful. There's some, we're exploring this with a couple of clients, but I haven't really seen anything live that does this, right? Where you completely rethink the way that you interact with a business.
That's very cool. With your company, did you start this company recently? Is this a long going? You're like in Series A, right? Are you still? What was the reason why you started now this company? Because obviously, did you see kind of this growing, this hype growing, and you're like, well, I've been working in this for a long time, so is that why you jumped in now? And did you see this as something that was like, okay, this is obtainable now, where in the past it was a little bit of a ambiguous feat?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's two key moments for me. The first one was back in 2017. This was when I started the first company that led up to this company, right? So the first company we started was a consultancy, and you could see that just natural language understanding was getting good, was getting interesting. And I always thought that the way to solve the problem of a conversation between a software program and a human being is by applying an agent-based view to it. Right? So what I did when I was in academia, multi-agent systems, what is a multi-agent system? It's a system where you have multiple entities, each one has its own goals, and they're communicating, collaborating, coordinating to solve their own goals and to solve a broader common goal, right? So if you think of what is a conversation between a software program and a human being, it's a multi-agent system. There's at least two agents, the human being, the software program. Each one has its own goals. Say the AI agent on the one side wants to sell you something, you want to buy it at the best possible price. You're going to have a back and forth to solve your individual goals and the common goals. So back then we said, okay, let's start building systems where we take this agent-based approach to it from a design perspective. That then led into, well, let's build software that's going to let us express these ideas and actually build them out. And that software then in 2020 became sophisticated enough that we said, you know what, there's an actual product here. It's not just our toolkit to use internally to solve our clients' problems. There's an actual product here that we can open up for people, which led to branding it OpenDialog and so on. And it has always been the way to solve this problem is to take a software engineering approach that is agent-based, and it's actually multi-agent based because you have at least two agents, the software program and the human being. And when you're building something, you're not just building an AI agent. This is something that eventually I think people will get to. So today, most people still think when they're building the thing, they're building the AI agent. You're building the AI agent, but you're also building an environment within which you're going to place the AI agent, and then other things are going to come into that environment. So your design stance has to be, I'm building a space within which various things are going to come in, and I need to be able to monitor and control and help all of them to get towards a useful outcome. There's actually research and frameworks, and this is what we drew from, to say, okay, how do you design those spaces? So for me, like this company, from an engineering perspective, is just this search, right? To say, okay, how do we do software engineering that's interesting for multi-agent based systems?
Ronald, if I wanted to design an agent swarm to replace David, to get him off payroll, is that can I accomplish that today?
You can try. I don't think, David, it's all good. You can stay where you are.
Not a practical.
Valuable. Come on.
How many years before I could replace David?
That's the interesting question. And the answer is I don't know, and I'm not like avoiding it. I just don't think it's clear. If you go and look at research, It says for basic tasks and basic planning, large language models are great right now. However, once it gets to multi-turn interactions and reasoning with social nuance, they fall apart. Like they cannot get. I'm going to. So I have, like everyone these days, I have a Substack. It's called Agents Decoded, and one of the posts I wrote there is, can agents run an organization today? And all I did is I went and looked at research, looked at actual experiments. What do they say? And what you can see is everything that is complex social dynamics, AI agents today fall apart. So what David does is complex social dynamics. It's convincing people to come in a new organization, to buy a new thing, to explore new ways of doing things across lots of different mediums and so on. Like we've already all identified on LinkedIn all the bots, the AI agents that come under your post and say, oh, what an interesting post about the complexities of AI agent development. And we know that's AI generated, right?
Because it's awkward. It's socially awkward.
Yeah.
There's something off a little bit, yeah.
Or all those AI SDR agents. I know that companies are making money off that, and I'm sure there's some sales there's real value at the end of it. But how many people are you pissing off in the process of generating some sales by the end of it?
Well, that's what I want to know, because I'm not going to say the company's name, okay? But the companies, I won't. But I asked myself the other day, I heard this, like a company just laid off all of their SDRs. And I thought to myself, and this is something that's a little bit annoying to me too, because, companies have been saying, oh, we promise we're not going to replace people. AI is going to enhance and create more opportunities. Yes. And well, you're laying off all your SDRs, dude. And then the other thing that's bothersome to me is remember, I don't know if you've ever lived in the States, but back when I was growing up and David was growing up, customer service was it was customer first. And then all of a sudden you started calling into companies and it's press this button, press that button. And now it's 20 minutes before you can get to someone, if you can get to someone. And I feel like that's kind of the way, if we're going to go there, AI agents, if we're going to go no SDRs, are we actually going to get what we need from companies if that's where they're going? And that's a little bit of immediate concern if that trend continues. So I just see that a task like answering an RFP document that's 4,000 questions long. I see AI agents being able to handle that very well, tasks like that. But replacing David's not coming yet, huh?
And I think that there's also some nuance to that, right? So if you're an experienced person that is given an RFP document with 4,000 questions, and you send it off to something like O1 or whatever, or R1, if you want to get, you get back the results, you'll have a quick glance through it, and you have a relatively high level of confidence that, it's right or wrong, here's something I need to fix, and you've saved yourself hours and days of work. But that same process done by an inexperienced person can lead to absolute mess, right? Because they don't know what they're looking for. I think that's one of the, that's what we're also seeing with coding agents, right? I use Cursor and GitHub Copilot, and I love it because it's all these little ideas that I want to play around with, and I can build quick prototypes and go show my team and say, hey, look, this is the sort of thing I'm talking about.
Yeah.
But we're not going to let that thing go to our actual production code, right?
Yeah.
It's a mess.
It's not a junior coder right now. Yeah.
It's not even a junior coder. It's a junior coder with no social understanding or appreciation of nuance and so on.
Yeah.
It's but in the hands of a junior coder, the two of them together,
Yeah.
disaster, right? And that's the challenge. Like, how do you work in a world where you have this really advanced technology, can do extremely interesting things in the hands of very inexperienced people, and then, sorry, at the same time, organizations that are replacing, like Facebook saying, you know, we're going to have mid-level engineers, Zuckerberg saying we're going to have mid-level engineers, it's going to be a
Yeah,
large
he
language
did.
model and so on. I mean, Facebook is already a mess, but really, if you do that as well, I think it's a bit too much.
That's awesome. Ronald, we're coming up at the end of the hour, and I've loved having you on. I think we need to do a follow-up, and because personally, I think there's still a lot to explore.
There is.
Let's do a follow-up, and maybe we'll you know, we could do some interesting things in that follow-up hour. But yeah, I love talking to you,
More than
and
happy.
definitely, like, I was reading, anybody who wants to check you out, you know, even on your LinkedIn page, your Substack, you should definitely read his work. He has a lot of interesting publications on there, and if you're looking to understand a little bit more about AI agents, that's a good place. Where else is a good place for people to understand about you and your company?
LinkedIn and Substack, those are the places.
Okay. Okay.
Go over to OpenDialog AI. You can sign up, try the tool.
Yeah. Yes. Thank you. David?
So I have so many more questions, but yeah, maybe like we can do another call if you're up for it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, because like I think there's a lot of insights that we can get from you in this industry and cut through the hype and, you know, like share, like I said, share it with the audience and figure out what's working, what's not working. Also wanted to kind of dive a little bit deeper into specifically what your company does. And I had some questions there, but maybe, yeah, maybe we can schedule another interview, maybe like, I don't know, in a month or in a few weeks or something like that. And, you know, I think it would be a good conversation, a follow-up conversation there.
Sounds good.
If
Let's
that
do
works.
it.
Sounds good. Let's do
Yeah,
it.
it's great talking to you guys.
Yeah, it was great talking to you. Thanks for jumping on the call with us. Like I said, I think I have many more questions, you know, specifically, you know, when it comes to your product and you know, how it can be leveraged in today and in the fast moving pace of AI. I just want, like, you know, yeah, a lot of questions. I'll save it for the
Let's
next
do a
call.
follow-up.
Yeah, let's do a follow-up. And then, yeah, thank you for joining this call. And, you know, like I said, we'll push, you know, we'll be pushing this out to our audience and readers. And thank you for all your time and insights and information that you shared with us today.
Thank you. Thank you. It was great talking.